Welcome back, closers. This is Chad. Welcome to episode 5 of Who the Fuck Closed Last Night. This week, we're going to talk about what it's like to live life without weekends and holidays. We're going to talk a little bit about work-life balance. And just heads up, we recorded this episode before the transient nature of the service industry. So Jacob still was working at Keeney's. Keeney's was still open. So we probably are going to mention that. Guys, enjoy the episode. Welcome back.
Honestly, this is a pretty early day for me.
What time is it right now?
What is it, 11:30?
Oh, noon.
Noon?
Yeah.
This is early for me.
Yeah.
You were like, be here at 10, and I was about an hour late.
You're totally, that's totally fine. That's part of the schedule.
That's part of the schedule.
Yeah.
I think, you have morning shifts.
I do.
I never have morning shifts.
Yeah.
So,
Well, let's talk. Yeah, the topic actually kind of
it's
correlates
what we're
with
talking
that.
about.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're going to talk about what it's like to live without weekends, without mornings, without holidays.
Life on a different schedule, man.
Different completely. Yeah.
When I say different, I mean the 9 to 5, which is generally considered to be the kind of one of my favorite terms, and people use this in our industry a lot. And why I would mention it is people are like, "It's my Friday," and I don't even know. I don't have a grasp on how everyone's life is.
Sure.
That because I've always been in the restaurant industry, we talk about that.
Yeah.
And so I don't have a grasp on. Does everyone have a 9 to 5?
Yeah.
Is somehow the narrative of the 9 to 5 just becomes some sort of standard based on a number of things that we could probably learn a lot more about.
Sure. Yeah.
But either way, that's kind of considered the standard, right? Like waking up in the morning, working, getting off in the early to mid-afternoon, and
that's
sort of what our world is based on, right? That's when most
people
that's when
do.
banks are open.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, and it actually, it makes it. I have friends that have a normal 9 to 5 lifestyle, and it makes it sometimes difficult for us to connect and hang out when we want to, because they'll hit me up. They're like, "Oh yeah, we're doing this weekend." And I'm like, "Cool, I close Friday and Saturday, so that is not something I can do ever."
Those are for my current work schedule. That's my. I said it on mic, but that's Friday and Saturday is my Tuesday and Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yeah, I work Thursday to Monday usually, so
Yeah.
which has always been a schedule I really liked.
Yeah. Yeah. What was
the weekend? What most people consider the weekend that I went to public school, so I guess what was the weekend when I was in school? What aligned with my parents' schedules most of my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And it's a weird transition to at first. Also, our hours being different than like 9 to 5 lifestyle. Usually, exactly when you're getting off, and on that Friday, man, you might even get off at 4:00, bro. You might get a little early start to the weekend.
Right. Yeah. I mean that's definitely a big gap.
It is
conceptually. I'd say even the periods of time where I've had a different job. Briefly, getting off work for so many industries, and I'm sure there's plenty of other types of industries like that, and even some within the hospitality world. I've experienced like managers have pretty set times, especially like an opening manager, right? Like they're like, I'm coming in at 8, I'm getting off at 4. That was always a little more standard than pretty much any of the hourly employees, the front of house people, the back house people. When you're getting to work. You don't know when you're getting off work.
Man, I remember the first serving shift the first place we talked about last week that I worked at. And I did the rookie mistake of saying, "Hey, my schedule says I'm off at 2." And they were like, "Oh, no. We're done when we're done."
We're done. I think last time I remember having an out time at a restaurant was like at work in a middle shift in the kitchen at like a fast food place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that was pretty I think I was in like high school.
Yeah.
So I think it was like they can only have me work so many hours. So that was kind of a. I think I was generally off around that time, but there was even then it was never like my schedule, 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. There was no. 8 p.m. was a suggested time. I mean, we could have been slow and I could have gotten off early. They could have been like, hey, buddy, we really need you to stay.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and outside of any sort of labor law, maybe they needed, maybe they couldn't keep me on for 12 hours or something. I can't even remember now.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, beyond that, even on my schedules, even to this day where I work at a restaurant that's got pretty straightforward hours, I mean, my shifts right now in my life, I either get to work at 3:30 p.m. or 4:30 p.m.
Right.
Which is an opening or a closing shift. I mean, it's we pretty much try to get each other, you know, half the staff's opening, half the staff's closing, some portion of that for our servers and bartenders. And, like, ideally you're getting there an hour early, and ideally you're leaving an hour early.
Yeah.
But we're just trying to project, right? Like, well, it's a busy night, everyone's hanging out. We might get out of here about midnight, so we might try to get you out of here at 11. But you just never know.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's definitely a window.
There is.
Of how about, you know, the latest night you ever had versus the earliest night you ever had. But,
oh, totally. You know, and so much of that is up to, like, what happens throughout the shift. It also makes that difficult sometimes to make plans outside of work, where you got friends that are going to a concert, and you're like, well, you know, I'm going to try to take I'll try to take the first cut, but I might not get that first cut, and that first cut might not happen until 10 o'clock at night because we're slammed.
What do you mean by cut, Chad?
Oh, yeah.
What does that
explain that? Yeah, that is, people that are released from work based off of the business volume. So sometimes there's too many people scheduled, and it's a slower shift than we thought it was going to be. So, you know, that first cut might go immediately before the shift starts because we just see how slow it is in the restaurant. Or, you know, you might be second or third cut, and it might be later in the night. You have a very vague idea when you're going to be cut, even in those situations.
Right.
And most of the time, even with the close, you know, it's like, as a bartender, well, if I was able to start pre-closing, which is where any good bartender is going to start to do little things around the bar to make sure that they can get out as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Which I feel like, you know, that's when, you know, there's a lot of people that experience different, I mean, you can always tell when people have been in the industry or not based on how they respond to you closing. But yeah, I'm sure anyone listening out there, maybe you've seen a bartender cleaning something up or breaking something down. It's like, yeah, he's not trying to, especially with the bar, you know. A server sweeping a table right next to you is one thing.
Right.
But a bartender cleaning stuff, he's thinking about 2 hours from now.
Yeah, he's not trying to rush you out at all. Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the reasons I like it is because, like, as a bartender, if I want you out, I will let you know. That's it's probably one of the things that made me get involved with it. You know, is that sort of honest
Feedback you get.
Feedback you can give. But yeah, don't worry if they're cleaning. They just got a lot to do.
Exactly. So, you know, some days, you know, if you got slammed, you were unable to get some of that done. It might be an hour after everybody leaves the restaurant that you're still having to do stuff, or maybe it was a slower night and you were able to get it right out. So it is, you know, we do have to. I think part of loving the service industry and continuing to be in it is being adaptable that way, and embracing the fact that you don't always know when you're gonna be off. You know.
Yeah, which, you know, once again, that was very. I mean, I've known people that have had various jobs. You know, even like people that I've talked to that are tradesmen. It's kind of like, if it didn't get done today, we'll pick this up tomorrow. But you can't. You've got to, you know, you got to put the liquor away. You got to do the restock. You got to do the cleaning. You can't leave anything, you know, any stone unturned for the most part. You know, you can't just leave fruit out all night. You know, if you've cut fruit, you either got to get rid of it or You got to have a way that you're storing that. Like, there's just so many different tiny little things. You're familiar with one of my favorite, like, sort of popular people in the industry is John Tafford.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
Bar Rescue. Really cool guy in terms of. I mean, that show, it's kind of, what is it, like Kitchen Nightmares? But
for bars
for bars.
specifically. Yeah.
But I actually watched his TED Talk yesterday.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And not that a lot of what that talk was about is what we were talking about, but it was more about managing and like being in the restaurant and bar industry. And he made a great point about how everything's managing, moment to moment.
Mm.
He talked about, like, if you make and sell T-shirts, someone doesn't buy the T-shirt today, you put it down, it's just the same T-shirt to sell tomorrow.
Right.
But it's a matter of time with restaurants and bars. It's like you got to be open when people are hungry. You got to be, if someone's a little late, that's money on the table.
Mm-hmm.
And while that would probably be a bigger deal for someone who owns the restaurant, right? Like, they want to make this process. For us as bartenders and servers, it's just like, especially me, I'm fortunate enough to work in a part of Denver that has a lot of wealthy business owners and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
There's always these opportunities where, like, I just treat the right couple of guys the right way for a couple shots,
Mm-hmm.
at the end of my night, like, as long as I'm legally allowed to serve them, which I close pretty early. That's actually not much of an issue.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, if I make the right connection with the right guys, that could make me and my coworkers, since we're on a tip pool, hundreds of dollars, either that night or the next few nights. A couple businessmen in town, we treat them right. They're staying in the hotel.
Yeah.
Now they want to come back for dinner. Now they want to get big bottles of wine. There's just so many different things one has to consider. So that time of night, it's not like, well, we closed at 10, we're,
Right.
come back tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's just it's such a looser concept with work, and definitely plays into work-life balance in a certain way. Like you mentioned, getting off with friends and.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking about this yesterday, actually, when we were kind of looking into this topic, and like kind of we'll get into kind of the things we've researched, the light research we did. We're not journalists; we're bartenders.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about this, where like we are literally in an industry that is the most in touch with capitalism. Like, we are like subject to capitalism, like in its purest form, because the more money we bring in through those guest experiences, we're immediately, our pay goes up because of that.
Okay.
Even like when you think about like inflation, I was talking to Ben about this earlier, where prices go up, everybody still feels inflation, but when prices at the restaurant go up, our pay immediately goes up because we are tipped employees.
Oh yeah, I had that exact experience recently, where my manager was like, she said, "Well, we're supposed to adjust all the liquor prices 6 months ago. So I'm going to check in with the rest of it, but all the bourbon is at least $3 or $4 more per pour." And I was like, "Did I just get a raise?" Yeah, I mean, someone tips 20%. It's 20% on $3 more for whatever, old-fashioned.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we're also subject to the negative aspects of that as well, where if you're, the restaurant's slower, it's a slower season, all of a sudden our pay decreases, and this kind of goes into that work-life balance where, which can be difficult, where in those moments where all of a sudden you have less shifts because less people are needed at the restaurant. That's also like a direct effect of like capitalism right in our face in this industry.
Yeah, so now I'm kind of understand. I didn't understand exactly when you texted me. I was like, capitalism. I was like, yeah, of course we have jobs in the capitalist economy, but I didn't really see what you meant until just now. Yeah, I mean, you've experienced both sides.
Mm-hmm.
It was like having to schedule those people, and especially the restaurant you work at. There's a little bit more. Some places in general, are a little less affected, right?
Mm-hmm.
Last night I went to In-N-Out Burger, which is, you know, still newish to Colorado, and they always had all their restaurants are all have a line out the door, but across the street there was a Dairy Queen that also serves burgers. And I was like, man, you know, like the In-N-Out doesn't really have a slow time.
Right.
Whereas, you know, the old Dairy Queen right now does. And I mean, that's very maybe representative of that one street or whatever. And
Sure.
But yeah, you know, different restaurants, you know, depending on competition and everything, which makes sense, right? With capitalism, it's like the people down the street are out competing you. Yeah, that's going to change all of your servers and bartenders and cooks and everything. All of your, you know, how much is going to be on the paycheck, or how much money you're walking home with at night. So
yeah, absolutely.
and you've experienced that on what I was trying to get at as a manager.
Oh, yeah.
Like having to
those times.
break the news when people can't be in there, or like trying to help the people that, you know, are going to work there for the next 2 years to still make money, or like.
Right. You really it's a difficult thing, because it comes down to labor, and during those tighter where if you're not bringing in that profit, you don't have as many dollars for labor to use the people that you want to use, and it does. You know, that's, I think, the one of the difficulties in the industry is that can cause a lot of stress for people, because you still have bills to pay, right? You still have rent due, and it is so important for managers to do what they can to reward those best employees that are always consistent with you, that are always your best employees performance-wise, to make sure that they have the shifts even in those slow times, because you want them to stay. It's going to actually cost you more money if they end up leaving in that slow time, if they have to get a second job. You're going to cause more stress to their life.
Because like we had mentioned before, there's always those there's those part-timers, right? There's those school teachers who have the one shift a week or whatever that you could be like, hey, you know, are you good for like these 2 months? Like, can someone take this shift? But like, you also have those career people, those lifers. And yeah, I mean, I guess there's sort of that balance that exists, right? Like, it's good that you have those people in with how capitalistically driven that any individual restaurant is.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
But, you know, it's kind of really interesting the way, you know, that affects our day-to-day, and, you know, affects, you know, why we have this schedule that we work on, because, you know, you want to be there when there's money to be made, and you want to, I mean, ideally not be there when there's no money to be made.
Yeah.
And how do you project that? How do you like figure that out? How do you work that into your own life, work balance? You know, Friday and Saturday is my favorite example, because that's those big days where for us, you know, you and I right now, that's when maybe half my paycheck is made.
Right.
I mean, I could be working 5 or 6 days a week, but those 2 nights could send me right there. I guess you guys have Monday or Tuesday.
We do.
A special deal.
Yeah, a special deal is pretty sweet. Yeah, that board and bottle for sure. It helps out a lot.
Yeah, so, you know, you got those, you know, Mondays and Tuesdays are nice and busy for you, which is a bit of a boon.
It is.
Yeah, I mean, there's those nights that are... Oh, my God, excuse me. Sorry.
No, you're good. But yeah, the part-time worker is like so essential. So I was looking at this. Yeah,
you've got some notes.
I've got some notes, man. I did a little research here.
You did your homework.
We are in a class of what is considered like irregular work schedules.
Okay.
You know, and basically that what we were talking about like a lot of times our shifts are based off of business, and there's a lot of stress that's added to the work-life balance and the family-work balance, especially for people that want to work part-time or want to work full-time, but are all of a sudden given part-time hours. But the opposite is true for those individuals like we were talking about, like teachers. You know, we've also have like nurses work for us. You know, full-time parents. If they want to work full-time, or want to work part-time, then that balance is still intact.
Yeah.
So it's so important for managers. Managers are the key to this. Managers and owners to recognize those individuals that want to work full-time, and to give them those hours when they can. And it's doing the scheduling thing, I learned very quickly that you can't please everybody. You just can't.
No.
People
Which
are
is
going to
true in life, right?
Yeah. So you have to do what's best for the company, but also in doing what's best for the company, taking care of your best employees.
Yeah, which kind of relates to what you're saying is like managing. It comes to it being very capitalistic and almost a perfect representation of capitalism and the economy we work in.
Yeah.
I've got some notes and numbers about that as
Yeah.
well. It's very, it's a very like pure representation of like, I guess with you saying, there was this phrase I heard at my first restaurant job, and it's helped me be a good team player. This term, put your aces in their places.
Absolutely.
You've got your lifers, you've got your people, which I've found myself in this category where I'm very available to work, and this is my only job, and I'm having to do a lot of give and take, but that's part of my job, and that's part of what I experience as my job as being a full-time person in this industry. But it's like I've always had to leverage that to get what I want. I mean, at one point in time, that was a conversation between you and I specifically.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, what's, as far as your experience with that, what is kind of the pros and cons of?
Yeah, man. The pros and cons. So when you're, because we tried to do this at one point. This was back when Eddie became GM, and he tried to make a schedule during our slowest period where it was like fair to everybody, and tried to give equal shifts to people. And first off, it caused. Yeah, so we actually experienced this. I experienced this when Eddie took over as GM, because, like you were saying, Bree used to always tell me when I was doing scheduling to put your aces in places. And then Eddie wanted to, being the sweetest guy in the world, wanted to like try to make everybody happy and like give everybody equal shifts during this slow time, which meant everybody was like had one less shift. And what that ended up doing was pissing off everybody. Because
you had your people getting, I remember at that time I was getting 5 or 6 shifts a week, but there were also those people that had like 2.
Exactly.
Or 1.
Yeah. And you needed, there was a balance, because you wanted your best, we had to change it, and I had to go back to where I was giving my best people 5 shifts a week so that they could pay their bills, recognize those part-timers, and give them those part-time shifts, which they were more cool with if they have another job already. That is their main career.
You could explain it to them like, you got a day job, like we need to cut some hours back.
Yeah. The tough conversations, though, were the ones where you would have to have a conversation with somebody who just wasn't that good, and having a very serious conversation where you were just honest and truthful with them that, like, hey, the reason you're not getting these shifts that you want is because your performance is not there. Yeah. And here are the reasons why. And then with those type of people, they either improve their performance, or they end up finding something else, and it kind of sucks. But
which, it is definitely a factor. I would say you don't have to be in this industry to understand performance-based rewards or pay, right? Because it's more realistic, and it's way more short-term in our industry, because it's like, if you're not picking up the skill set, which isn't, there's not really college for, especially for a house. I know we're mostly speaking from bartending and serving perspective. It's different than having, going to culinary school and being a chef and getting hours and things like that. But, we're someone with, I don't know, let's say like a tech job, office job sort of thing. Your performance may affect a bonus structure, or you may not receive a raise on your annual review if your performance is at a certain level.
Sure.
So you're changing your year-to-year funds. But, your week-to-week salary pay sort of thing isn't going to shift, right? As much as like, hey, starting next week, sports are starting, and we always get slow for 4 weeks, for example. That happens at my restaurant. And it's like, you are not, your skill set isn't as good as John's or David's, whoever. And so you're about to make less money starting right now.
Mm-hmm.
Not because you aren't able to, but like, we're going to get slow, so you're going to make less money, and there's not shifts for you so that other people can make more money. So your next paycheck is immediately affected, starting basically yesterday.
Yep.
And so, it creates this, that's another thing with this sort of, what'd you call it, irregular hours?
Yeah, irregular scheduling. Yeah.
Is that when you were looking at that, were there a lot of other industries that are affected? Or, I presume that like some of that study maybe, because I read some of it, it considers people that maybe have like, I know like big industrial, like factories and stuff. I know some of that article went into like mandatory overtime, which definitely isn't a big thing in our industry at all.
Yeah, but also like retail workers is a big one for sure. And of course the opposite, like what you mentioned with mandatory overtime in our industry, the opposite is also true, that like if you get to a point where it's busy season and you haven't, we're talking about the work-life balance as it is affected.
That's huge in the kitchen for sure. Like,
for sure.
If you're short-staffed, we need you.
We need you. And all of a sudden you're causing people to have to work 50 hours a week. You're directly affecting their work-life balance in a negative way, even though they're getting more money.
Yeah.
And it does, this stuff all goes back to management and like how good leadership in a restaurant is everything, like absolutely everything. It's how you run a good business, but it's also how you keep people on your staff. And bad leaders can absolutely destroy a restaurant in several months. Yeah, and it kind of brings us to the thing, just for the listener out there. All of our industry friends will totally know this, but when it comes to us talking about hourly employees, bartenders and servers, people in the front of house on the floor, and then people in the back of house, or heart of house, as people call it, your dishwashers, your line cooks, even your chefs. And then sometimes, these elevated roles of like a shift leader, or like, whatever. The two basic, I guess, hustles, if you will, with, as a person who works for tips, you're trying to make the most money that you can with the hours you're allotted. So, tip pools are big. There's different ways to do it, but like, you're trying to like capitalize on the few hours you are working. It's very common to not work a 40-hour week, which is nice for work-life balance. But sometimes, depending on the restaurant, that may be 25 hours in 2 days. You're working like a double shift on Friday and Saturday. You're taking like a 30-minute lunch, and you're just like crushing most of your week's income in those 2 days, maybe 3 days if you work on Sunday. Different places with different services and busy hours. Yeah. And for the back of house, you're just trying to get hours in, right? You're coming at 2 p.m., you're leaving at 10 or 11 or whatever, but you're trying to get that. Some people like that 40, 50-hour work week, but that's also affected by, like you said, those labor costs. If you run a 2-person dish team and on a slow day you only do one, that other dishwasher can't get those hours, X, Y, Z, right? That's just sort of, I only say that just to kind of illuminate sort of what those hustles are and those grinds are, I should say, rather than hustles. But like, it's what those work, how that would be affected by you getting more or less hours. Absolutely. Yeah. And there are those other factors of like, if somebody calls in and all of a sudden calls out, and then all of a sudden other people are having to pick up shifts. It's very common for us to have very little notice of a need at the restaurant, where it's like, man, I'm gonna, and here's another thing is that when you get in a bind like that, if you have good leaders, you have people that are more likely to help you out in a pinch. So if you're a good leader and you're taking care of your staff and you're paying attention to their work-life balance, that in those moments, if Jen calls out, if you're a good leader, you can call a couple people and they're going to be like, oh man, I will be there. Yeah, absolutely. I'll pick up that shift. Or, oh man, I'm so sorry. I've got something else going on, but I've got you. As opposed to if you're a poor leader, you get in that situation and people aren't even picking up their phone because you're not paying attention.
they're, yeah, I mean, and that's kind of a big thing. Just gonna hang on there. There's also a big part of, being a worker. You just brought up calling out, just to kind of shift a little bit of what we're discussing here. Finding that work-life balance, something like a concept that I think is kind of new to like the 9 to 5 world, but like conceptually unlimited unpaid time off. What would you call that? UPT, not PTO. PTO is not a big thing. It is in this state for all workers, but not where I'm from. Like that was getting paid time off. I either made money and worked or I didn't work. But there's the benefit there, especially for front of house workers, where you get to like. You can call off, and most restaurants have a call-off policy. I know the one I work at right now. Like, you don't want to make it a habit because you want to be relied upon. But if something happens, as long as you give enough notice, there's not really a penalty. Like, you can be like, I can't work tonight, and the restaurant's going to figure it out.
Absolutely.
Whereas the concept of not going to work is a little foreign to like. People are used to like having to take vacation or sick days. It's not really like that. You really can, as long as you plan ahead, especially for vacation stuff, you're just like, I can be here or I can't be here, which is just an entirely different mentality than many people in your kind of, standard industries are, I guess I would say. I mean, I would go against that term conceptually, but like, you're like, I'm available to work now. I'm not available to work this day. Because obviously we work a lot of Fridays and Saturdays, but life events happen on Fridays and Saturdays. Friends have weddings, you go on vacations. But you don't really take a whole lot of paid time off for that. You just try to let them know. And then, of course, it kind of associates with management needing to, hey, I've got this guy. He's usually my Friday night bartender, and he's not here this weekend. He's at home. And the show still goes on. The restaurant's still open.
Absolutely.
So there's this balance of being able to be that person that is relied upon so that you can have steady income, but also knowing that that the restaurant will survive without you.
Absolutely.
I mean, I have friends, I'm not sure I've never personally worked at a place like this. I work with a small staff now, so it's a little bit like this, but I've got one friend he's the lead bartender of a restaurant in Alabama, and they have such a small team that like him not being there is hardly an option. He plans on like basically, I mean, in my experience with him, maybe this reflects more on his character and his approach to work, but anytime he travels, it's basically he's doing it exclusively around when the restaurant itself closes. Now that particular restaurant is pretty successful in town, and they close like 2 or 3 like full weeks out of the year because they had that small team. And so they're just like, essentially everyone that works there works all the time. They definitely have their part-time people and stuff for busy nights, but they're like, I think they take the week of like 4th of July off, which is convenient for him because his birthday's on July 5th. They take off, like, he's actually visiting in Thanksgiving. They take off, like, they just close the restaurant around Thanksgiving and Christmas, which I'd say is fairly common. Those big holidays, restaurants close. I mean, your restaurant's closed just on Thanksgiving and Christmas, right?
It is, yeah. There are, I think that there's other restaurants that do like see the opportunity to do like specials during those days where it's a set menu and stuff like that because they know a lot of families some families don't want to cook.
Yeah, my restaurant's open every day of the year. Actually, we just announced we're closed on New Year's Day because it's always slow.
Yeah.
But we're in a hotel. Even though we're not a part of the hotel, we are a part of the hotel. People are in that hotel. Some people are traveling on Thanksgiving, or they burn the turkey, and someone's got to be open, kind of thing.
Exactly.
Or like places like Waffle House.
Yeah,
they're always
absolutely.
always open, right?
Which I read another. That brings me to this was it's a great article about from Harvest America Ventures, which is like a restaurant consulting company, and they're a big thing about like holidays is that restaurants really need to celebrate their staff during that time, like because your staff is coming in, they know it's gonna be a busy, harder shift, and that those are the times that a restaurant should really celebrate their staff and take care of their staff.
Yeah, I mean, my personal experience, I mean, I have a unique scenario, but it kind of, shows anecdotally the experience of like living life outside of normal expectations. Because, here in the U.S., most people are like, oh, we're not going to be working on Thanksgiving. We're going to be working on Christmas. I think, a lot of companies and stuff go ahead and close like from like the day before Christmas Eve all the way until after New Year's. That's when they like go from quarter 4 to quarter 1, right? So that everyone's just off. That's just a time of year where, you don't take sick time or anything like that. That's not when work happens. Mm-hmm. Whereas for myself, I'm like, those are some of the craziest parts of the year where we might be having big events. We're going to be having lots of people come in. We have to like choose one of the 3 that we, if available, can take off, like Thanksgiving, Christmas, or New Year's. Like we can get one if we're lucky, if everyone else doesn't want that off also. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, I mean, I've changed my entire relationship with my family. I'm lucky because I'm 31 and I'm basically the baby in my family. So we don't really care as much in terms of, we'll see each other when we can arrange it. It's easier to travel, not during the holiday season anyways and stuff like that, but not every family is like, I would say most families aren't really like built that way. There's the whole societal context of being off and being with family for holidays, and that's certainly been a situation where I've shifted a major part of what most people consider like guaranteed. Mm-hmm. They know what they're doing that time of year. Or I don't know, I should say most, I don't know the numbers of how many people, but I know what just speaking on the typical experience, and when school's closed, when offices are closed, and that's when I'm working. So I mean, it plays to the schedule of the year, and also the schedule. It's the week, it's the year. It's when you're off, I'm at work. That's my entire life, right? It's just very, I'm here exclusively because you're not at work. That's when you can make me money.
Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah. 100%.
So it's just like exactly opposite.
And it's that brings me to thinking about like we've talked about how management can affect a work-life balance in these scenarios where we are a group that's willing to work those days where other people are not working. Yeah. We're willing to not have those weekends because we want to make the most money possible. What advice would you have for people in the industry to maintain a work-life balance outside of work?
I mean, it's most difficult for people who don't intend to be in this job, which is like we discussed last week. That's where it gets tough when long term that's not how your life. You're in school or you have another thing that you're trying to open your own business XYZ. Mm-hmm. But for people like you and I, where this is life. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think for instance, me and all my friend groups and the people that I can kind of rely on to end up being able to actually spend quality time and connect with, and even when it comes to like considering dating, like I am just very realistic about what I can and can't do. Mm-hmm. And I've just I've shifted my mentality and tried to see the benefits of living the lifestyle I live. I'm just in terms of restaurants, like, I'm never going to be able to go out, or for the most part, not going to be able to go out, go on a date on a Friday, but I probably don't have to make a reservation on a Tuesday or Wednesday because, so I don't have to make as big of plans. I can go at a different time. I can always go into a not crowded restaurant or bar. I'm not going to get turned away at the door when I'm out on an off day. But I mean, it has definitely encouraged me to, be a little bit more, I can put a little bit more stock and time into friends that are also in the industry. Not necessarily always my coworkers, but, I can make plans with these people and kind of reliably know that they can make good on those plans. And I think just kind of riding the wave, it's definitely changed my general outlook on like social expectations.
For sure.
In a good way.
Yeah.
I think just like knowing that, knowing myself, I think just kind of like taking it in stride, not viewing it like this is what I'm missing out on, but viewing it as like how can I make the best of this in my life? How can I, somewhat recently I talked to my friends about like, what days are you off? Like when are you off? Like, let's get the same days off, For me right now in my life, it's Tuesday and Wednesday. And like I was choosing that because I've got some of my best friends are off on a Tuesday or Wednesday, or they might be off Monday, or they might be off Wednesday, Thursday. But like had those conversations because I was able to make those adjustments. Yeah, that's as far as generally approaching how I've gone about, finding that work-life balance. The optimist side of me, I feel like, we've talked about how it's like capital, very capitalist and like sort of I'll jump into this to kind of make the point, because there are a lot of people doing this. Some of the numbers I was able to find, just as far as how many people, like what percentage of people work in this industry, because it's really not small. It's one of the last, this is based on a combination of some of the U.S. Census numbers and a few other like statistics bureaus. I definitely can learn a lot more about how accurate those numbers are, but kind of I took just basically the most median numbers I could find. Yeah. There's about 13.2 million workers in the restaurant industry in the U.S., making it the second largest private sector.
Wow.
In the country. So while part of what we're talking about is that like we kind of feel like we exist in the fringe of society. All things considered, we're really one of the major like groups. I mean, of course, part-time people, like that's going to include literally anyone that's employed at all, full or part-time. Definitely mostly part-time. There's way more part-time work. I didn't see any numbers on the percentage of that, but anecdotally, I would say, a good, 50 to 75% of every restaurant I've worked at is part-time.
Yeah.
I would usually say more than half. I know part-time has different I know the 40-hour work week is considered full-time, but, full-time for things like any version of health insurance and stuff always has different. In every company I've worked in, you can get your dental and vision insurance at 30 hours, 31 hours a week, stuff like that. But, it's 10% of the total workforce. Wow. So of all the people that are working on the books in this country, and it's definitely more than that. I'd say there is definitely a good chunk of people that one of the only jobs you can get undocumented, especially at smaller places and like smaller mom and pop shops and stuff. Not that I have an opinion to share here at all, but like there's certainly more people than that. It's kind of like if you look at construction or something, right?
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, second largest private sector. I didn't actually look what the first one was, and I didn't care because that's not what we're talking about. But yeah, what I could find is about 4 million of those are fast food. Some of the stats I was looking at, I basically was assuming it was about a third or more of those workers. So you're looking at more like 8 to 10 million that are in sort of the spaces that we're talking about that we have experience with.
Absolutely, yeah.
Definitely McDonald's and Starbucks were like the two that like employed the most people.
Sure.
So I think a lot of like the work-life balance and stuff that we're talking about, it applies to those individuals that are working, cashiers and dishwashers and people putting in burgers and bags and stuff. Those I mean, we both started at fast food places.
Yeah.
Fuck Chick-fil-A.
Fuck Chick-fil-A though. We got to
They,
squeeze it in at least once an episode.
I think it's going to be our major theme. Maybe we squeeze it in once every time to see how much traction we can get with it.
Yeah.
Some of the experiences that we're talking about absolutely apply to those individuals. They are a little bit more indicative of some of these numbers, these other numbers I have, that I just kind of want to run through because I find them incredibly interesting.
Yeah.
The restaurant industry as a whole, and these numbers are a little bit more exaggerated for those fast food numbers. So what I'm about to look at, affects fast food definitely a lot more than, say, fine dining, for instance.
Sure.
Substantially higher diversity, specifically with minority rates. So like a lot larger percentage of the workforce in restaurants are minorities.
That's great.
Of different ethnic groups, which in the U.S. is anyone that's not white, if you weren't aware. And so that's, there's a lot of people that are providing for their families with, maybe some of these and these could be people working at 2 or 3 jobs, depending on the availability of hours and things like that. And it's actually an interesting topic. I don't know how we would even approach this topic as a whole, but 46% of the workforce of men are. I'm sorry. I think I may be misinterpreting this. It's of like male identifying people of workers in the workforce. It's like 46% of men in the workforce are actually in the restaurant industry, and 54%. So I'm not sure. When I was looking at the numbers, it was a little confusing. I don't know if that means that. I think that's just the representation. So like 46% of the restaurant workforce is men, and 54% is women. So it's more women than men.
Right.
I think those were also kind of consistent with like the workforce as a whole. It was less than 50% of men that are working in restaurants, and more than 50% of women that work at all are. And I think the number, like I said, it was a little confusing because I'm only so smart.
I think you're smart.
But it kind of underscores kind of what we're looking at, and how you mentioned it's indicative of capitalism as a whole, is that we are a huge chunk of what's going on,
Of the workforce in America.
of everyone that's working.
Yeah.
So the fact that kind of going back to that thing I said about like, this is my Monday. It's like so many people. I don't know if it's most or what. We'd have to find a way to dive into labor statistics as a whole. But like, people are working around the clock. Irregular hours, people, beyond the restaurant industry, are so many of the people that work, that to have this standardization of Monday to Friday being the way that people work, like, to me, I mean, day in and day out, when someone says like, this is my Monday, I'm like, no, it's Thursday.
Right.
This is your Thursday. Work week begins on this day. Like, I, challenge the people in my social circles to think outside of like how you relate to being quote unquote normal. Because like, there's so many people doing what we do and working irregular hours or working in restaurants, is that like, that's not what life is.
Right.
Life isn't Monday to Friday. It may be for some people,
Sure.
but just like the term 9 to 5. I mean, how many 9 to 5ers have you met that are actually 7 to 3ers?
Sure.
Or 10 to 6ers?
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, granted, that's a little bit smaller of a shift from the norm.
Yeah.
And obviously enough people are off work and out of, football games are on Saturday, right?
Sunday.
Saturday, yeah.
Yeah.
From the South.
Yeah.
So I think of football games as college,
Is
right?
when Bama plays, yeah.
That's when Roll Tide. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
But yeah, I mean, it's just kind of, I just find it interesting, and I find it really kind of going back to you asking about how we take that in stride in life. It's like there are so much of the world that isn't on that Monday to Friday.
Yeah.
You're not missing out. If anything, I think that living the normal life, that there's as much to be missed out on not working in the service industry, not knowing what it's like to have a Tuesday night where you don't go to work the next day, or not knowing what it's like to go out on a Monday morning because you have 2 extra days off that week because it's the slow season and you're only doing 4-day weeks, and you have like all this, you have a whole extra day to do your laundry and shit. Yeah, I mean, that's what is, just to kind of circle that back to you, like, what is your advice? What's been your takeaway? You have a little bit more stable experience in life. You have a kid. You have more adult obligations than I do. Personally, I've got no pets. I don't even have plants. I had one plant recently. It died. So yeah, I mean, as far as you interacting with, needing to be a parent for school and stuff, like what is your recommendation on finding that work-life balance as someone who has to adapt a little bit more to the 9 to 5?
Totally, man. I think that first off, I love what you said, where that embracing of the irregularity of the job we're in, and not feeling like you're not falling into the social norms and letting that become any pressure for you. I think that's huge. I do think that it's taking care is even though we're doing this podcast where we have said we're lifers, we love this industry, absolutely do. To not make your job your entire identity is huge. I'm not just a bartender, No. So finding out and becoming comfortable with who you are as a human, and then taking up like different hobbies, making sure you're taking care of yourself outside of work, even down to like
there was some confusing numbers on the percentages there.
Oh yeah.
So I'm not sure how accurate that was.
That's okay.
What I talked about it was we discussed it briefly.
I mean, I think the main point was that
there's a lot of people working. Yeah. That's really what I was driving at.
Yeah, we're a huge part of the American economy, like a huge part.
Yeah, the one number that I did not have ready at the time that was really interesting was, the projection of 2024, which is the year we're recording this in.
That's right.
Where the restaurant industry as a whole is expected to contribute like over 15% of the national GDP, which means there's a fuck ton of money flowing through this industry, and you're not part of the fringe of society. We're a very big, realistic part. For some reason, it reminds me of. Have you ever seen Fight Club?
Yeah, absolutely.
I can't remember the quote. You may know the quote better. There's just the part where they're like beating up some business guy, and they're just like, I can't even. Maybe I'm quoting this poorly right now.
That's all right. I'm ready for it.
He's like, I just don't remember. He's like saying like, we're the ones that I feel like someone watching this would know immediately. We're the ones that like keep the world going while you're asleep, kind of thing. Your world is only sustainable because of us.
Right.
That's more of an aggressive way to think about it,
but yeah, we are. I mean, we are.
You wouldn't have somewhere to go out to eat if we weren't serving you.
Exactly, man.
At least how the world exists right now, who knows? I mean, I like my job in part because I feel like there's going to be with AI and everything. My brother, I've mentioned, he works in tech, and he talks about how AI functions, and there's all these processes that are becoming so easy to code. Something that just a few short years ago was someone's entire job for a year is now a thing you can slap, coding or AI or something on.
Yeah.
That person's job. I mean, they're always shifting their responsibilities because someone has to overlook these technological processes.
Right.
But like something that you could have spent all year doing is now something you could just have an AI do while you're doing inputting other information. Whereas like for the time being, someone's got to cook your food.
Yep.
Someone's got to pour your drink. Like, I think people like that. I mean, I know, especially in the scope of bartending,
Yeah.
the social connections that we make with people, like, so many people want that
Mm-hmm.
for various reasons, which I find beautiful. You know, I find very fulfilling, which I believe we talked about last week some, is there's so many people that I've known so well
Mhm.
behind the bar that I don't know at all in real life.
Yeah.
But, like, they'll come in and I have something, you know, how was your trip? How's your daughter doing? How, you know, yeah, you brought this one girl that I served, she brought her, like, dad in. She's like, yeah, this is one of my favorite bartenders. And I was like, hey, nice to meet you. It's like, yeah, I just, like, met more of this girl's family than probably her most recent boyfriend did. You know, like, he's like, yeah, buddy, you want to make this drink? You know how to make this shot? And it's like, I already, like, went through that process you normally wouldn't experience with someone's dad unless you, like, were getting ready to marry someone. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah,
and
dude.
it's just like a closeness thing.
Yeah. I agree. I had that one regular of ours at Postino that, like, I talked to him throughout his entire divorce, like his,
Yeah.
you know, the whole process, having been through a divorce myself and stuff like that. And then he came in one day and he was like, and I knew that everything that had happened throughout that entire time of his life. And then he came in one day, he was like, man, it's official. I'm divorced, man. You want to come to my divorce party I'm having? I was like, hell yeah, dude.
I would go to a divorce party any day over a wedding reception.
Bro, it was so much fun. We did some mushrooms. We ate, like, barbecue that his brother made, who owned this barbecue place. It was amazing. But that, you know, it was a special, close relationship that you develop. And like you said, I think that while there are many jobs a threat from AI and stuff, this service industry, people cherish those connections with their bartender, even if they don't really know it.
Yeah.
Their bartender, their server, the people making their food. Like, there's something something beautiful about, and has always been, eating with other people and breaking bread with them is something we do help people do on a daily basis.
That's part of being, you know, communal, and part of the human condition as it stands, in my opinion, you know, to make it as serious and integrated into the world as I possibly can.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely.
And then, you know, I kind of wanted to go back and, you know, a lot of this industry are those, you know, I mentioned fast food workers. That is a large amount of the people that are, you know, we started in that part of the industry. I'd say for any of you lifers out there, people that are like, I want to do this. If you're managing a Taco Bell, that's one of the only fast food restaurants I personally eat at, because I like to, you know, if I want to hate myself, I want to do it as aggressively as possible. So I really want to eat, you know, if I want to put something that I'm not sure if it's even real food, which I do legitimately enjoy it a lot. All right.
So good.
All right. I'm not. I love Taco Bell.
I love Taco Bell.
Taco Bell sponsor me, dude.
Absolutely.
I will get a Taco Bell logo tattooed on my arm.
100%.
All right. Don't. No, I love Taco Bell.
That's so fucking good,
But if you're out there and you're managing Taco Bell or something, you're living your life. Advice ways. If that's not a part-time job for you, if you're trying to figure out how to make your career better, so many skill sets that come from those, dealing with angry fast food drive-through customers and working on, you know, putting tacos or burgers together. There's so many ways to take that skill set and to move it into, I'll use the term real restaurant. Not that when you're working it doesn't feel like a real restaurant, but you can take that and you can like double your income. You know, you use your management skills for managing and scheduling people. You take that to, I don't know, even like a Chili's or something. There's these great ways. There's kind of this path, you know, indicated kind of with our own personal paths. It's a great way to get into a world. If you feel like you don't have skills, or, you know, you're not good at school, or, you know, something, you know, part of your life has led you to feel like you don't have a lot of options. You do have options, even if you're just working at the McDonald's or the Starbucks. Like, there's so many ways to take those skills I mean, there's such a direct path. If you want to be a business owner,
Yeah.
Don't be discouraged because you're at a point in your life where you're like working the drive-through window. Like I think that's what's beautiful, clearly indicated by some of those numbers. There is an infinite need for food. And yeah, there's ways to expand upon that. And, obviously you don't want to open the wrong restaurant in the wrong city and everything. And I mean, a lot of it drives, for me personally, bartending and, moving myself into like finer and finer dining.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a big shift in life. I grew up in like the suburbs in Alabama, and I've had to like, moving just to the biggest city near me wasn't quite enough for my progression in the career. I needed to go to a bigger city.
Right.
And I wanted to move to Denver, but Denver is only so big.
Yeah.
Unless I like wanted to, if you think about a career, which not a lot of people in this industry do, there's a lot more jobs than careers.
Yeah.
In the restaurant world, and bar world, but yeah, you do have to end up in cities. You got to go. You want to go where there's more money to be made, or you want to go where you can get more people in the door. It's like, do you put your bar in Westminster, Colorado? Not that there's anything wrong with that,
right?
Because people drink in this little city that we're in right now, but a lot more people are going to get in the door if you're in Chicago or LA. Or, even more than Denver, right? Like, so a bar in London sells a lot more beer than a bar in, Boise, Idaho.
Yeah, man. I think that actually goes back to work-life balance as well, because, I don't think you should ever be married to a corporation or a company especially when it comes to this industry. You need to be able to, it's so important for you, for the comfort of your own life, to be able to pay your bills. That's number one, that not having that stress of being able to pay your rent and pay your bills is huge. So being willing to yes, I've worked at this Taco Bell for 4 years. I've learned so much from this company, but then looking forward and being willing to leave that company for yourself, to look out for yourself over a corporation, over a company. When we do this, when we're even day to day, when I'm working as a bartender, I have the backs of my fellow employees, and I love them dearly. And I love my guests. I love my customers. I love my regulars. That's why I do it. It's not necessarily for the corporation's motto. Those mottos can be great, but unless they're lived daily, person to person in your restaurant, they're meaningless. Yeah. So we really do this for each other, and in the end, you also do it for yourself. That's like something, number one for work-life balance is looking out for yourself, You have to look out for yourself, whether it's, for myself, taking time off to be with my daughter, to go to her guitar concerts, to her school functions, to just have those weekends with her that I have. I hold myself and her over who I am as a bartender any day of the week. That's what you do. You mentioned this earlier, like that's what you do, right? Like, yeah. I love that question. What do you do? Yeah. Most people say their job, and that's what I normally say in that conversation too. Question you get asked a lot, especially bartending. Mm-hmm. They're like, "What's your real job? What do you really want to do?" I hate it and I love it. Right.
Yeah. What do you do, Chad?
Yeah.
What do you really do? Obviously,
like, man, I'm a father. I rock climb. I'm so many facets. I'm an actor. I'm a lover of movies. There's so much more to each human being than the job that they do.
Yeah, and my opinion, fully my opinion, is so many jobs make you be that thing. Mm-hmm. And yeah, a lot of times I'm like, this is my real job. This is I've been asked that question before too. What's your real job? And I'm like, this is what I do.
Yeah.
And I love that because I love being able to kind of shift someone's perspective on what my job is, because to them, I'm just like someone who's clearly transient and clearly at a transition in life. And, when I've had this conversation, I'm just like, yeah, so are you. Like, what do you, you're like a car dealership owner always? That's all you are?
Right.
But that kind of going back to work-life balance, like the opportunity here and my advocacy for for this job and for this industry is like you don't have to be that thing. You can put bread on the table, which is a joke I used to say when people asked how I like my job at Olive Garden. I would say it puts bread on the table. But, I feel like it ties into, people being able to be like a person, getting to be to work to live, not live to work.
Absolutely. I also there's this that saying of if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah.
That's just fucking bullshit. I don't care.
You're saying you never work a day in your life, sort of thing.
I don't care what your passion is. My passion for a long time was acting, and it still is. But there were still days that I was acting that was work, man. And I was hitting up 3-4 auditions, and it was work. It wasn't like it was hard. And even though I love bartending, I'm still gonna work. You're still gonna have bad days.
Well, you can only enjoy cutting limes so much.
Exactly, man. And
or shaking 10 cocktails while 3 people are waving you down because they're running out of water.
Exactly, dude. It's still going to be work.
Yeah, that's just not a comfortable situation to be in, right? Like, it's not like, this is so fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I do like when I get really way too busy because it's very engaging and enjoyable and rewarding. But
it's in, like, you kind of
focus in that process of working, of completing work. I think that's a whole other conversation in and of itself.
Yeah.
But I think just this thing, we're talking about living outside of weekends, or not having weekends, not having the regular weekend. But what is the weekend? What does my time off mean to me? Is it a thing where I'm just like doing the same routine, or am I taking ownership of what I want to do in life? And I think that living outside of the 9 to 5, living life without weekends, quote unquote, is such a blessing, if you will. Like we're afforded the opportunity to separate who we are as people from what we do, and we're also fortunate enough to be able to integrate who we are into, because I just get to talk to people about who I am, and I get to connect with individuals while I am just grinding and making money. I have the opportunity to reinforce who I am as a person, and how do you feel? That has benefited you in everything else you're trying to do in life, all your hobbies, your interests, your actual focuses in life. Like, how is that? How's living without weekends like really benefited you?
Oh, in so many ways. I mean, it's embracing that, as you said earlier, being able to like go out and hike on a Tuesday when there's nobody in the woods and be by myself and collect my thoughts.
I'm never in Colorado, right? We hiked that 14er.
Yeah, that's right. We hiked that 14er.
It was a quiet day, and there were so many people out there.
Oh yeah, that's true. That one specifically.
That specific day.
That specific beer stats very. Yeah. But being able to do that, but also like the day to day as an actor, it being a bartender like improved my acting because I got to interact with so many different people day to day and learn
improv skills.
Yeah, exactly. The improv skills.
Hell yeah.
Man. Yeah, dude, and it reminded me to be a real person and not to just label myself as one thing. But yeah, there's just been so many freedoms. I think that during this episode, you especially have reminded hopefully all the people listening to this who are in the industry that we're important, man. We're like super important, and to embrace the irregularity of our schedule. That it can be a very good thing if you don't let it weigh you down. To take care of yourself and to maintain that work-life balance. It takes effort in any industry, but that effort's worth it, man. It's really worth it. Yeah.
It's exciting.
It's exciting.
Just like any scenario where you'd be sitting at a bar and you could have another drink, I feel like we could talk about this forever. I actually am really excited that we went ahead and covered this because I think this topic is just going to be part of what comes up in our forthcoming interviews and everything between open and close here.
Yeah.
But I believe we've made it to our last call.
I think we have. Last call time.
So pay your tabs,
Pay your tabs.
tip your bartenders.
Yeah. Come see us at our restaurants.
Yeah, once
My
again.
boy here
you
works
know,
at Keeney's.
Yeah,
down
just
at
come on
Cherry Creek.
down if you feel like getting some pricey, albeit very delicious seafood. It's not that bad.
It's not that bad.
It's Cherry Creek in Denver.
Yeah.
You can wear sweatpants. It's cool. It's Denver, man.
It's
no one
Denver,
gives a
man.
shit.
No one gives a shit about what you
Get
look
yourself
like,
a
dude.
glass of wine from me or a bottle of wine from Chad.
Yeah.
Probably the same price.
Probably. Yeah.
We got good deals over there.
We got good deals, baby.
But thanks for tuning in.
Yeah. And
Listen
thanks
to
again to Ben, our producer.
Ben, our man.
Yeah.
Keeping us
giving
in
the
line
signal.
here.
Absolutely.
You're listening to Who the Fuck Closed Last Night.
Who the fuck closed last night?
And we'll talk to you again real soon.
Yeah, man. Fuck yeah, dude.
There we go.